All right, people, you guys are watching and or listening to another Nomadic Cole live stream. This is Nomadic News episode number 24. So be sure you guys, if you haven't already, leave a like, leave a comment, share, and subscribe for more epic, awesome, cool, funny, and interesting and entertaining content just like this one, because this shit is for your entertainment. That's right, people. This shit is for your entertainment. And make sure you guys come over here. If you guys come in while we're live, you guys are welcome to come over here and use this chat bar on the side here. Yeah, it will give you a little chat replay, and it will give you a shout out to your YouTube channel. So go ahead and leave your comments over here in the chat bar. Or if you're tuning in after the fact, you can always comment down below. We always appreciate your guys' feedback. Anyways, we've got a special guest for you guys today. It is my friend TM Drake, and he is in the VC too long. Oh, yep, he's in the VC right now. He's been waiting just a little bit too long. So, yep, he is in the VC. So let's get right on to it. All right, let me just screen share you over real quick, and we'll get right into it. Screen share. There. All right, Drake Dragon, you are here for an episode of Nomadic News. How you doing, man? Your mic's on mute, by the way.
There you go.
There we go.
I thought I clicked it on. Yeah, they should have RTC audio on both. That's what I thought. I didn't get a chance to test that, so I was wondering if there's anyone here. This is what happens when you have bad hombres that work in your warehouse.
What's that?
That nut does not fit that screw.
Uh-oh.
This is every single door sensor has this. Now, here's the catch. If I took half of the screws and put them together, okay, randomly, someone like you would try to screw them in, and they would screw fine. This is the shit I have to deal with at work because we hire fucking non-English speaking people. If I give them the simple way to do it, they do it upside down. I tell them make black ground. They make it hot.
Yeah.
Ugh, I hate this every time. That's why I'm one of those many people who break the IQ scale. You give me any alien piece of technology and I'll make it work in an hour. That's because some of us don't work like these fucking hombres. So yeah. So I'm gonna have to go run to Home Depot in a bit to go get the right screws to go fix the rest of the contacts. They keep destroying our contact sensors. I was actually gonna get a proximity sensor, but I don't know how to install those without getting the electrician in. That's the same ones that use like the boat rides when you go to like Disney and those rides know where your position is at. They actually have sensors by the side of the boat that detect where you're at. So if you get stuck, they know on the computer where you're at actually at any given time. Prox sensors.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. So how's your day going?
Yeah, I work with just about any piece of tech, alarm, not alarms. I was doing cameras last year. I don't exactly know, and took a nice 6-month break. And my boss goes and like, "Oh, we gave guys, and you didn't give me a break. I was working the whole time. Thank you very much." Yeah, working on a few nice fun projects. One of them was a friend of mine had a really nice light up bike for a Burning Man. He actually wanted me to go, and he still wants me to go this year, but I'm debating it because I kind of like to have a place of my own first, and then I could pull my art car in and work on it and stuff like that. He's trying to do some welding classes this year, so he's going to have a little fun with that. It's usually one of those normal white guy that everyone hates and scared of and never gets a screw wrong, works on his own car, stuff like that. Yeah. Most of my whitey friends were like, it's kind of funny because his neighborhood invited us to a Super Bowl party the other week. And what surprised me is one of his friend, Chris, which actually owns a really nice Italian restaurant. So yeah, he's that scary white guy everyone hates. He's about younger than me, kind of your age, actually. And the funny thing about his lifestyle is that I don't know if he has a family or what, but he threw a Super Bowl party, and his whole block was like 4 or 5 parties going on. So we just walk around the block. You look up on the window and you see a bunch of like Imperial Walkers. So, and then the next guy in the neighborhood has something in his window and so on. I'm like, This has got to be your suburban neighborhood.
Yeah.
If I did that here in this area, I would not see that item there by the next day. It would be gone, and there'd be like tons of bullet holes. Matter of fact, there's a lot of fireworks going on outside, but since I'm in the inner office, you won't hear it.
Well,
So
at least that's
I don't
good
know
so
why
we
they're
won't
blowing.
interfere with our audio.
Yeah, yeah. You might hear a little pop, but it's in the background because it's way on the other side. So I'm in the inner office. Yeah, I'm the only office here that has no window. And I'm also the only office that has to share a space with someone throughout the day.
Interesting. So,
Yeah,
how's
I
your day
know. I
going?
don't really get my own office. Yeah. How's what?
How's your day going?
Well, let's see. I came in heavy traffic getting here. I normally don't work on Saturdays, and if I do, I usually try to make sure it's one less day I work in a week, so I can easily say that on my time clock I was here because they geolocate time clocks. It's all electronic; you do it on the phone, but it geolocates. So, because I'm considered a service technician, I might have to be at one of the three warehouses. So, and one is all the way in Tennessee, which is probably close to you, actually. Where are you? Where are you from?
Nah, I'm out on the islands, man. I'm back out on the islands.
Islands?
I was
Where
in,
at?
I was on the mainland for a little bit and then I came back, so now I got my own little.
Where in the islands? Hawaii?
Yeah,
No.
Hawaii. It's really
You went all the way to Hawaii?
well,
That's one of my scheduled places to visit one of these days. Mighty Red Wolf's in Hawaii, and
I
he's
know
been
Mighty
wanting to
Red
get
Wolf.
me out. Yeah, have you met him?
I want to meet him, but he's on one of the other islands. I'm not on his same island. He's got to like we got to work something out to meet him.
Yeah, I'm planning. I just don't know when, how. He's got a nice place and plenty of area, so we could have a little fun hacking stuff up for a week. When I was in Florida with my other, I don't know if you would call her ex or liberal or whatever, but she is kind of center to the liberal now, but because of inflation. She was trying to do her early retirement in her 50s. Some people can make that happen. You know, there's many ways of doing that depending on how, quote, wealthy you are
Yeah.
or trying to be. Because some people are look wealthy, you know, with all the fun stuff, but or owns a lot of businesses and things like that, and they're managing, so they don't mind spending 2 3 days. But yeah, she's a collector, a lot of vintage audio equipment and gear. And so I was over there. That's why she gave me the binary clock that's behind me. If you can see it on the video, that's a binary clock, by the way. Of course, I have the original board. It didn't make it through UPS. It was cut in half. I probably could have soldered the circuit board back together and bring it back to life. I go, this is an opportunity to hook it up to the network, and just so I'd never have to set the clock when network time. You don't set clocks, but yeah, the binary clock is generally a milestone for most nerds that tend to say, yeah, we can show you the time in binary. So if you ever want to know binary, that's a binary clock.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah,
So yeah, the very far digit.
yeah,
Go ahead.
we've got a lot of news to basically kind of comb over because a lot of shit has been happening over the last like few weeks since Trump's been in office. So
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I'd
there's a
say
lot of stuff happening in Houston too since the fires. Haven't you heard?
ah
About 50% of the people who actually live here, I'm going to say 70% of them, 50% of them still are. They said about 60% of them still isn't going to sell their property. I mean, so what? Your $10 million property is only valued at what, $1 million dirt now, 1/10 the value with nothing on it.
yeah
Just clean the debris off and build another house. But who wants to build when insurance ain't going to cover unless you pay them an asinine amount of value? So, so Newsom's getting a lot of flank for that right now, and there's a lot of and still he wants to give another. I think he just gave it as of Friday another like at least $1 billion or so to the illegals actually,
yeah.
because they all seem to have money. No one else I know has money.
I mean,
So
it's true. I mean, it's just crazy that they, they keep they forget about all the people over there in California with the fires. I think we did.
taxpayers, you mean the people who actually work and actually has a every month looks at how much money disappears out of our tax.
Yeah,
That's why reason why I'm not buying shit as much as I used to, unless it's for work, of course. But I mean, today's inflation, and you know how easy to go through a $20 bill. You just go to McDonald's at $20. You go to Home Depot, cut a key, it's $5. Used to be $1 cut a key. And this is automated too. This is not like someone I'm paying to do it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
you
freaking
plug
insane.
in, you get your phone, and yeah, it's insane. It's like I'm paying for an automated system more than it costs than a person to do it.
Yeah, as
So yeah, it's insane in
inflation.
California because yeah, it's not just inflation. We keep hiring people who have very low IQ. And I keep saying, when I grew up in Florida back east, I mean, heck, you got to get a 95% of your test to get an A. Here, I think it's something like 35% and you get an A. And you get an extra bonus point if you're black or brown.
Oh yeah,
I had a guy that went around me on a red light. I'm like, okay, I mean, I was going to make a right turn here, but if you wanted to go straight, fine. See, that's the problem with California is that it's like up is down, down is up. Like I said, they only the hombres know everything is backwards.
yeah. Bunch of bad hombres
So
running around, man. It's crazy.
yeah, and that's the problem is that only I think New York cleaned its act together. Did you hear? New York mayor is now flipping sides.
Yeah,
He's moving more south.
I
Yeah.
heard about that. Eric Adams is actually he's actually doing something a little bit different than what the mainstream
Well,
Democrats
he's
want
trying
to
to cover his ass, at least. Hopefully he'll at least cover enough of it to save his soul because in California here, Newsom knows he's only got 1 year left because he can't run the next year, if I recall. But I think they say Harris might actually be the one running here, or they might just give it to her somehow.
do. Kamala Harris, yeah, I heard she's
Yeah.
planning on running. I also heard that RFK's old
Well,
VP Nicole Shanahan is planning on running as well.
I would love to see someone with at least some brains like Larry Elder, which has pretty good, decent brains in his speeches. And I know Newsom's trying to start his own show too. That's the latest thing. I'm like, okay, Larry Elder's been on air for like what years now, and he's talked about this. And Newsom's like, oh, we're gonna now talk about it.
You know what I would really like to see? I would like to see Larry Elder try again for governor because he was pretty close last time. I think actually he was like pretty close, especially winning a lot of the rural counties. And then I'd like to see Nicole Shanahan because I think she is gonna appeal a little bit more to those like Silicon Valley type of people. So that'd be
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you get the younger, more millennial generation. That's kind of why Trump did so well a lot with the millennials, because he can talk to people at their tech level, which is people on electronic medium, not no longer a newspaper and old archaic forms of medium. So he's in there too. And that's one thing that a lot of new politics, especially in the conservative party, that they've lost a lot of people is because if you're just going to tailor people who only have maybe like in their 60s plus, uh, using a smartphone is like they only use it because they have to communicate. See, they're not gonna newspaper and all the other archaic form of medium to get their word out is kind of outdated.
yeah. That
So yeah,
That and it kinda counters out if they try to run Kamala Harris, she'll try to run on identity politics. Well, you have a Larry Elder, Nicole Shanahan ticket. We've got
yeah,
a
exactly.
black guy and we've got a woman as well.
And that's the beauty of it is that I don't see her as a woman because she's a woman. I see it because she actually got the skills to do the right
She's really
thing.
smart
It's
actually if
like
you listen to some of her
yes,
podcasts.
people who actually have came a long way to learning the community, speaking with the people that they're represented, and things like that. And I'm always hiding in this office, so they ignore me half the time.
Yeah. Let's talk about because speaking of inflation, let's talk about that whole situation that happened the other day with Zelensky and Donald Trump. Um, the Ukraine deal did not work
I
out because Zelensky
I
decided
am just so surprised of someone of Zelensky's caliber. Okay, he's got it made. Okay, the U.S. gave him a lot of money. Okay, and gave him pretty good amount of military equipment. Now, of course, if he wants an F-14
$119 billion
fighter.
dollars to be specific.
Yes, he's got a good amount of money right there to fight the war, or at least a skirmish, I would call it. But it's not exactly a war because if we go to war, we have nuclear powers to deal with. And yes, Russia does have nuclear warheads. Whether they work or blow up in their face is another story. But I'm sure you and I don't want to get in the way of that either.
Nah, I
So
don't.
from what I'm understanding is Zelensky had it made for him, and he kind of brushed it off like they were joking around. But from what I've seen from different newscasts that guy is acting so much like an asshole. Hopefully, he's able to put it back together and try to cut this deal and walk away in the global economy, trading their assets with what we need for energy here and other things, other supplies. Because that's one thing I like to see is stuff more made in the U.S. of A. And whether you have skills or no skills, will equip you with tools and skills. That's what had happened.
Well, the deal
You live in the
yesterday the deal yesterday, here's the thing about it, was that it was supposed to be basically a ceasefire and peace treaty wrapped up with a minerals deal where we get a 50% stake. And if we got that 50% stake, it actually was supposed to be a deterrent against Russia reinvading Ukraine because
exactly.
if we got that 50% stake, that puts American workers at threat. If Russia kills an American worker, that's justifiable for America to either restart sending the aid train again or actually do something.
Because we're only allowed to bring on to the war powers of war. Well, technically speaking, if it's in self-defense. There's a couple of, if I remember, policies that allows us to interact those powers. I mean, those powers are kind of locked away, even though
Right.
people kind of push them around. But in Congress, yeah. So as long as we can maintain the peace route and just trade skills and assets, we're not actually trying to take land, invade, or anything like that. We're actually assisting him in bringing his value of his assets up to trade in the global market. He has something we could use
He has lithium.
and they could use our support. Yeah, it is a good opportunity. I see for someone like Zelensky to brush it off. Yeah, it literally has it made for him. He just has to stop this nonsense, And I know he's neighbors of Russia, which could also be even a bigger asset to us too, believe it or not.
No, oh yeah. Well, if we can
Yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
a peace sort of deal with Russia and create a relationship with them, there's a lot of positives that could come from that as well. Much to the dismay of the shitlib SJWs, of course, who think anything Trump is bad and Trump is Russian. Um, I mean, this deal also was going to like the people were saying, "Oh, they're going to let." I heard people on social media saying, "Oh, they're going to let Donald Trump take over all of you. You know, they're going to let Russia take over all of Ukraine." And here's what actually would happen: they'd only get this really tiny sliver. Most of it's actually just like frozen tundra and wheat fields, and there's like some mineral assets in the ocean around it.
That's kind of the funny thing is because wouldn't the president of the United States be more interested in promoting our country and promoting our own resources and selling in the international trade than the other way around than trying to take over that land because that's so far away from us and it really doesn't have an interest. It's better to have an ally than to take over something because then you have more relations and they can still keep a lot of their culture. They may have their own cultural and one of the many few things I've noticed in the more of the conservative movement, they tend to have a little more respect for other cultures. It's just we have barriers, and like anyone else, you close your house door for a reason because you want to have your own party, do your own stuff, but your neighbors can do whatever they want. See,
Yeah.
so we try to not affair with them unless their neighbors all of a sudden start bulldozing our front yard. Then you might have a problem. That's the retaliatory notice. Yeah, but see, that's kind of the thing that you learn when you deal with international is that every country has their own skills, their own scope, their own culture too, as well. And like I said, I'm hoping he could actually reclaim his mess he created and maybe recover some of that. But I think there's also a feeling that a lot of the liberals don't like it because there's strings attached. And this is something that a lot of people don't like too. If for example, you go work for someone, you're in exchange for hour for compensation. So there is a string attached. But usually there's an agreement set aside so that way everything gets balanced out at the end and everyone's generally happy.
Yeah.
And not just trading. Yeah. That's one thing that I think Zelensky kind of screwed himself on the foot because he's assuming that the strings were pretty bad. And instead of, I don't know who he talked to, his doesn't he have like an ambassador that's supposed to say, let's go have lunch, let's go weigh it out. Yeah, I'll admit he didn't wear a suit and tie, but you know what? I'm not a suit and tie guy either. But maybe
Yeah.
he should and probably should have taken the deal, and then that would have solved a lot of issues. And then the phase two of this would have been a big handshake And of course, the liberals will be just yelling and screaming again, but they may just realize they lose one loss. They're just trying to take this as a, well, see, I told you so. But I'm like, you didn't tell us anything. We kind of expected that someone might, you get the idea. There might be some stuff going on that kind of teeter them in the wrong direction. But I've seen people, I have a few artists that are from Russia too as well, and there's a few other people I run into on FA and things like that, including Ethan's another guy that's a Russian fur too.
Oh wow. I
So
mean, the other thing that I think the part of it was there was a disrespect that Zelensky was coming into the White House, and it wasn't just not wearing a suit and a tie either. He kind of sat there, like you could kind of tell by his posture. He kind of sat there all cross arms and pouty for most of the interview, and he was like trying to just like have his way. Look, I mean, we've kind of already known Trump's stance on Ukraine for a while. He doesn't want to send Ukraine a whole crap ton of money. So, like,
or any of those really nice fighter jets and stuff he's been begging for now, because obviously Trump is in control of the executive and military too.
yeah.
So he could easily say, nope, nope, we're not sending you any more stuff. You figure this problem out yourself.
And
So
that's basically how it kind of ended is, well, Ukraine's going to have to figure it out. The EU's apparently going to step up for them. I think they're going to exhaust their resources eventually, though, the EU. I mean, they really haven't, the US has been just the greatest supporter to this war. And as far as funding and military spending goes, the EU's finally decided to pull their weight. I'm like, why weren't you pulling your weight this whole time?
well, that's the thing about EU is that I don't know how much ties US has with EU in this date and time. I know there were balances change over the last 10 years I've seen, but coming from a lot of people I know from that part of the world, apparently. So it's one of those weird things you don't really pay too much detail until you run into someone from UK and then they talk about this and they talk about that, um, things like that. But yeah, it's that's the thing about I think the term is geopolitics because
Yep,
there's so many flavors of the political science era. And when you get into geopolitics, you start to realize there are so many other cultures out there, and that's why there is the European Union, there is NAFTA, there's all these other groups out there that are like looking at each other, but you don't really want to get involved. It's just like another group of convention of friends and foes.
pretty much. Yeah,
Actually, they have their own convention too.
yeah. um, yeah. So there was that happened yesterday, and that was just a mess. Actually, Zelensky. I think what really pissed Trump off though was Zelensky actually called he called JD Vance a bitch in Ukrainian midway through the interview.
I was wondering what that word was. Someone mentioned
Yeah,
it,
he
didn't
said
mention
puta.
it, but yeah, JD Vance actually
Means
is
bitch.
pretty good at being, I think, multilingual. Yeah. JD Vance is pretty good at just literally just saying exactly what he thought it was going towards. And hopefully, like I said, Zelensky can back down from this because he's making his country look pretty bad. Not badass, but bad. There's a difference. He thought he was making him look bad.
Yeah,
It goes up because basically he gets a invitation to the White House, all pretty much an all expense paid trip, essentially,
yeah.
from government to government. Yeah.
And then he goes and decides to. Well, first he goes and he's basically like that guy from that old movie, that kid. Please, sir, I want some more, sir. And then he decides to be all disrespectful and shit too.
Yeah, that's the problem. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what, because from some, like you said, the body language from some of his other speeches kind of tells me he's hiding something. Now, Russia might already know what he's hiding because that's the reason why they went after this stuff. But at the same time, we're trying to talk it out, and he's like, Yep, I'm the rich kid now on the block.
Well, you know what I think he really why he's acting the way like this? I think the main reason he's doing this is because one, he wants more money. He's already spent some of the funding we've given him on Spanish villas and sports cars. And secondly, the other thing
Lucky
that
him.
the other thing that he wants to do is he wants to continue this war partially out of a pride thing, but also because look at where the money is coming from. Look at who's the defense contractors are paying. It's these leftist politicians, people like Joe Biden, who are getting the most money from defense contractors to fund this Ukrainian war. Something's up, man.
Yeah, follow the money, they say. That's the other big thing, that news on the US aid, or whatever it's actually called, that has nothing to do with aid.
Yeah. Yep. We're just gonna
So
get into that actually because we're gonna talk about some of the
yeah.
deep cuts.
Oh no,
US,
finances.
USAID has, obviously we've uncovered a lot of their, you know, a lot of their funding to a lot of projects that the American taxpayer wouldn't approve of. Transgender surgeries in other nations, experiments on like dogs, like the Beagles experiment, for example, um, and a ton of other.
Larva fish monitoring. I'm
Yeah,
actually checking out Doge's website right now, because they keep adding stuff to it like every other day. You can follow them on X. They got a real-time profile. They're publishing stuff like every day. February 16th, so 8 hours ago, they just found some other contracts to get canceled.
a lot of the
Um,
contracts they
of
pulled
course,
from the Government Accountability Office, and they're pooling that, and then they're, making it more transparent to the public.
I know my work complains if I start racking up their credit card, I have to start showing receipts
Yeah.
and write excuses. Yeah, so why can't the government do the same? Shouldn't every expense that goes out, we should have in this date and time with all the digital information, I should be able to go up to, okay, government treasury. Let's see, what do we want to look for? My friend says he works for the government. Search for it. Oh, he works in this department. And like, maybe that's where's all of that? Where's the transparency?
I don't
We
know,
have the
but
technology to do it.
I don't know how it works for some of these other agencies like USAID, but,
Yeah.
during my short period of time working for the Department of Interior, we had to keep our receipts.
Yeah, and like I said, it varies from department to department how accurate they are, and um, if you have a proper treasury, they should have everything on books. And in this, like I said, in this date and time, that books could be electronic. I can understand the books 10 years ago switching to electronic, but today we do so many things, from even paying your taxes all electronically now. They kind of already know how much you owe,
Yeah.
scary as it sounds.
The
But because of the more, yeah, and Elon's a very good tech guy. He's literally the White House tech support. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've worked at the accounting department here for many years, and we fixed a lot of leaks. We fixed a lot of bad data, because if you also put bad data in the system, just like you were saying, you don't categorize correctly, and it makes it harder later on to figure out where that money went or where that funds went. Because if you think about it, the America Financial Department is pretty much like another business. They're just funded by taxpayers, not by selling government. Well, they do sell bonds, but that's another story altogether.
Yep. I'm really pulling for Doge to, get together all these contracts, to put together all these receipts from USAID, take all these receipts that they're going to do, cut the IRS and all that, and I want them to put this stuff together into a proper rescission package, send it through Congress so they can vote on it, and then we can remove that debt.
We can drop that debt, and I've been saying that, like, some of the people, I don't need that stimulus he wants to do. I says I'd rather have them pay that debt off, because we're broke. We're literally, as a nation, is broke, and it doesn't feel good when you're trying to when you're barely paying. Like, okay, where's my tax money going to? And at the end of the day, I'll say California, they are doing good at putting streets in, but I will say it takes them a lot longer than many other states that I've seen. So I don't know, career politics. But yeah, there's a lot of local state taxes and federal taxes, and some people complain, well, no, California has the highest they pay in federal taxes goes to other states. So okay, we'll fix that problem. Why is it so high? What can we cut? What's the most important to us Americans? And before we start helping other people,
Yeah.
once you have the military strengthened, once we have people that respect our community, respect our way of life as much as I don't mind respecting Ukraine's way of life. I would prefer them not to send a bomb drone to my house, but on Elon's internet. They did send a couple of drones that were running off his internet. So that's the scary part. Yeah, they're taking advantage of shit. But at the same time, you can't expect humans to do always the right thing. So this is where checks and balance, the term in our government, came along, and same thing with financial accounting, to be accountable for where those funds are going. Remember, those funds are just goods and service. Some people work hard of it, some people pay a small amount, some people build a house with it or move to another island and start businesses. It's the same thing. We could provide back into the community.
Yeah.
No one's going to save money in the bank, because if you save money in the bank, they're going to loan it back out. See?
Yeah, I definitely think that we do need to use the checks and balances, go through all these payments that have been made. A lot of them, I know Elon was on, I think, Joe Rogan the other day talking about how a lot of these agencies that they're finding the fraud in is like they're just signing off blank checks and whatnot as well. It's crazy.
And you see, the scary thing about all this funding crap that I hear, that goes, oh, well, you're Republican and Christian people spend blah, blah, blah money. And they give me all this stuff about the whole Christian community. Okay, fine. They don't like Satanists. They don't like people that think outside the box. But at the same time, they raise their own money. That's why they start 501(c)(3)s, and they get tax benefits to help their own community. That's more at the local level. If you want to do research on these fishes and stuff, sure, start a small group. Maybe the state can give you a little bit of a hand there to get that building
Apply
going,
for a
but
grant.
that's usually local to the community. Yeah, Florida was this way. When I grew up in Florida, yeah, we had a little bit of property tax, but you get to learn about marine life and all the stuff, and hurricane research. That's all local. That's not this federal having to do, okay, we have to take care of every single thing you do. And I'm like, no, they don't.
Yeah. But sadly, though, there was
So yeah,
cuts that I did find disagreements in. Was there was cuts to the Office of Veterans Affairs, which is actually
I saw that too.
one of the most
Yeah, I saw that when the
underfunded
veteran.
one of the most
How long?
underfunded
Now, that's another
agencies.
question: is how long do you consider someone a veteran? Because we do know veterans still are around in our communities. Not as many as they were 10 years ago, but they are still around.
Well, I mean, I'd consider anybody who served and was honorably discharged from the military a veteran. And unfortunately, a lot of our veterans, they have a lot of problems. Mental health issues, injuries from
I
battle,
know a few
injuries from work,
myself.
chemical exposures. All of these are affecting our veterans. We're coming off of this Afghanistan, Iraq war thing. Our veterans need help. I don't think the Office of Veterans Affairs is something that needs cuts. Another one that was cut was the Department of Interior.
I would agree with that. I think that should be looked again with the voter base in the community and the amount of veterans that are still around, because some of those information should still be in their database. If we have a 150-year-old person collecting Social Security, I'm sure the veterans are flagged in some sort of database they can cross-check it against to actually get the real numbers, and that would help a lot to still provide some funding to it, not cut it 100%. You're right, because those people are real people who served us, and a lot of them can't help themselves.
Yeah.
They're very hard.
The other
So yeah,
agency I found cuts were made to was the Department of Interior. A lot of park rangers, even people with good, I believe they call it a PPAP, good, good performance reviews were fired. Even firefighters. It was about 4,400 employees from the Department of Interior that were fired, and we're about to hit fire
I
season.
wonder if they're related to BLM, building land management, because California has a big area of that too that they manage. So, but I don't know if it's statewide here or we actually get funding bounced back down for that. Because during the wildfires, I know a few guys that go up to the mountaintops and do the communications. They have to work with the park rangers too as well.
Yep.
so they have their own set of resources. Yeah, I do agree that some of that stuff should not have been cut. Some should have been laid on the plate first, but maybe vote on it, public voting, that sometimes
Go
gives an idea
go
before
through
you
a
completely cut it.
congressional
Yeah.
decision package after being debated and talked about in hearings, if you ask me.
Yeah, I know because the question is, yeah, how much can you really cut, or can the departments made more efficient? Because like something that require a lot of labors, building, land management, forestry, all those services are environmental related, do require some level of physical resource. While certain types of research out there that you don't really need to spend several million to $1 billion just to answer one question, that could be done in a local
Yep.
community.
And there's
That's what I say.
and there's some jobs in the government that I think, a lot of it is like analysis jobs. I think there's some of that we could use AI to, cut the workload.
It's exactly my point. The automation today can cut some of those jobs. And again, they have resources to determine in HR who's running those jobs. And I'm not totally against working from home, but at the same time, those resources can be moved around. And if someone is appointed to say, wait a minute, maybe we could solve the homeless problem with some of these resources. And that's the thing that it gets me, is that he's too much of a businessman. He is a good businessman, Elon himself. But in order to work in the government and stuff like that, you kind of have to look outside the box too. And some of those people are just career jobs. They're like, you know what? I get my 8 hours a day. They pay me to sit here and push a button.
Yeah. Some
I can't say you can't be cut. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm, like, kind of in support of Elon's, whole idea of emailing of every single government employee and giving them the question of, "What are 5 things you did this week?" And the left is absolutely flipping out about that. I'm like, "I don't see a problem with that." I feel like most people in the Department of Interior could be
Just a
like
pulse check.
could
Yeah.
easily like, most
If
people in
if
the
you didn't show up for work
like,
today, they might start calling to see if you fell dead.
"Yeah,
So, yeah, it's just a pulse check. And, I think any good businesses should see if the people that they're actually writing checks to are still alive.
yeah, most federal employees who do their job would easily be able to go and be like, "I did 5 things last week. I refurbished a chainsaw, I did truck checks multiple times last week, you know, we did, radio communications work, we did, fighting a single tree fire out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere," and then, I don't know, something else.
Fell asleep in my office desk for 2 hours after lunch.
Something like that. I don't know,
Yeah, and see,
watch DEI video.
it might sound a little embarrassing to say something like that to a bunch of people that, yeah, I do sometimes fall asleep when I'm coding, and you will sometimes get like this, okay, I'm gonna have to take a break and pass out for an hour and then wake up, unless your boss walks over and goes whack. But most of it will just see that you've been at the office. Um, but at the same time, like I said, it's just a pulse check. It's just to see, are you still alive, or is this email dead? It's like, because they can generate emails like any IT guy is just running a giant server, and all these resources. At the end of the day, yes, you are a name and a number in their system, but does that name person still exist? Remember, we lost a lot of people in the last 4 to 5 years after post COVID, heart attacks, weird stuff. So there's a good amount of people who may have just fall flat, and their plus one is collecting their check.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree because there's like they produce emails for like every time they get a new federal employee, they like automatically make them an email that's like the letter of their first name, their last name, and then at the agency.gov, right? That's how they make the
Mhm.
emails. And they can
Yeah, it's there's a story to the .gov part, but that's because the way the TLDs are set up on the global internet space when the internet was launched in the 90s. So that's where the public space kind of started. And they were trying to design it so depending on what state and what region, you have the different segmentations to follow. So that way when you do get a government job, you get an email name, it has the official looking in the like .cal, .us, whatever, .gov, so they can kind of figure out where you at and where you work at in part of the world.
Yeah.
But yes, the first name, from what I understand, at least from some of the IT guys that work there, I mean, they do have some policies, but none of it has to do a pulse check on the email. I mean, for us, if we had two extra email floating around and two people left, we don't check it at least 6 months to a year. We're still paying for that service and license. And that's another thing, too. I don't know how much their management cost is, but to manage all the stuff also adds up. And every little bit adds up. If the government can actually have people who are both honest, which I don't know, cough, cough, honest, that keyword right there,
Yeah.
and who's willing to do 110%, remember that 8 hour I said earlier, and actually check all this stuff, that's really a rare breed. And they're not liked by unions.
Yeah. I think,
Yeah. So that's the reason why you end up with a lot of this garbage.
yeah. I think, yeah, when like the way you put it, that when you're paying for that email service and you have extra emails, old emails that haven't been canceled out yet, that can count as as fraudulent waste. That's wasting taxpayer dollars on that.
Yeah, it's wasting taxpayer dollars, and we don't know who's collecting those benefits. If they are an actual person. See, that's another thing. I don't know if he's actually just doing an email blast, because anyone who owns an email server, runs an email server, you might have a couple of emails that are just forwarding emails. Let's say you took over two guys that left your job. You might redirect their email to you as a manager. So, and then, like, we try to date stamp it now. We try to put a note on the record somewhere. So after about a year, we just dump the email because so that we don't get spam. But you get the idea. They could also be just duplicate emails too.
True.
So there are many other records that he's there, but he is definitely tech support. So if he's trying to clean this stuff up, there's no doubt he's in the right direction. But some people see it as exposure. But then again, was the government very that transparent to begin with?
It was not as transparent as it is now, because under Biden, everything was so shady. Everything was
Behind closed doors.
behind closed
Hmm.
doors. Just look at the way he pulled out compared to like how Trump or even Obama pulled out. Trump and Obama exposed more stuff. Joe Biden scrambled to hide stuff when he pulled out of office.
I mean, he operated out of the basement, didn't he?
Pretty much. He
Basement
wasn't
Biden.
he was barely around, he was just like when he was outside, he was just looked like this bumbling, stumbling moron who just ate ice cream.
He's just trying to be that nice grandpa.
Yeah, like that was his character, the nice old grandpa, and he'd be like, "Oops, I'm the silly grandpa who eats ice cream and fucked up Thanksgiving
And
turkey
has a
dinner."
bunch of grandsons, which is the US of A. I just, yeah.
And then meanwhile, behind closed doors, he's like sending billions to Ukraine and Israel.
We're supposed to ignore those billions of dollars when we're broke.
Yeah, we're supposed to, but the government, they eventually, things come to life. They come to light. Journalists go and figure this type of stuff out all the time, and well, then we see it, and then we get mad.
I
But
did a little journalism back in my younger era, but it was way back in high school. Who, what, when, where, why,
yeah,
something like that.
shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah. The morning announcements.
Oh yeah, you did morning announcements.
I did a little bit. I didn't do the video production, but we did a little newspaper club, and then we had a little like newspaper ran in high school. I was on a middle school in Florida, so we actually had all sorts of little thing in the side.
Oh,
And I remember being toured in USA Today and seeing those giant machines, but now I realize those machines didn't have computers in them.
that's yeah,
They're all mechanical for the printing the newspaper and stuff. So
yeah,
even though today you can just set up a WordPress site and boom, you already got your own news feed, right?
yep. I mean,
So it is pretty open now. So
yeah, that's good. There's some other
mhm.
news that we have as well. Did you hear about Tulsi Gabbard, now the head of director of intelligence? She's exposed transgender sex chats over at NSA.
I've heard of that, and not gonna lie, I actually kind of knew that because there's a few people in my other group of friends that actually work for the government, and they are on some of our chats. Not to know, but they're under a different code name because they're under all furries have their own code names and different persona names, so it
Yeah.
makes it hard to identify. Including the story of doing a random barrack check at an infant. I think one of my friends in infantry, and he had to man up because there was a big giant dinosaur in his barrack room
That
when they
sounds
did a random
pretty
check.
hilarious.
Yeah, he had to tell the guy, says, just ignore the big giant dinosaur hanging over my bed.
He must have gotten
Yeah.
yelled at.
I don't know if he was honorably discharged or dishonorably discharged, but he did serve during the Afghanistan and stuff like that. So
Ah,
yeah, there's a bunch of furs, military furs that are out there too.
I know
But they all learn to get code
of
names
them.
for that reason. Yeah, code names so they don't hopefully. But I do know that stuff like that does go on. So even though we try to keep it professional, but you know how people are.
Yeah, but it turns out they were using government emails to send their naughty chats to each other, and it was about 100 workers or so involved.
Well, I'm sure they won't be doing that anymore anytime soon.
I'm pretty sure they just got Doge cut. They just got Doge. You got the Doge cut.
Yeah, they got the Doge cut, but the thing about working for the government, depending on how bad those cuts are, if you play your cards right, you're kind of semi-retired to begin with. So just go find a job elsewhere, essentially. But the problem is I don't know how the economy is doing right now, so that might be an issue. So
Yeah,
depending on what
our economy,
was
unfortunately,
on life support for 2 years, yeah.
it has not been good. It has been,
Mhm.
we already went through the coronavirus, which caused stagflation. Then we went through then we went through Joe Biden spending all that money on Ukraine and Israel and all the USAID funding and gain of function funding. We went through all that, and that caused hyperinflation because the Fed kept printing money, and they printed more
Oops.
money than we have oil reservoirs because we have the petrodollar. They printed more money than we have um, oil reservoirs for. So that hyperinflated the dollar. And now that's why, like you said, you go to McDonald's and you buy one meal and you spend $20, and it's crazy. And now,
Well, I'm not sure how to say that when you do print money, okay, well, we can call it printing money. That what they are is they're borrowing against something. I don't know what it is. If you were to get a mortgage, you've got to have some collateral. Even if you got a car note, you got to have collateral. Now, collateral, like you said, is the gold reserve. I mean, the oil reserve, and then the gold is another thing we could talk about too. That I'm kind of curious to see if there is any real gold in Fort Knox. But beyond the point of backing the money up by some sort of assets, land, or anything like that, it's now becomes a giant IOU. And the joke is you can print up as much IOU as you want. Now, you can also say the same thing with stocks because that's how the industry of Wall Street works too, is that they do put a paper asset to that, but they have a value of the company's value kind of in exchange. So you own a few of the company shares that way. Now, the government, similar things when you get into bonds too. You could literally own a few bonds of the government and they'll pay you back on a little dividend, but you're literally buying in and saying, hey, I'm not going to take this amount of money out. You guys can go use it and go spend money with it, but you still I own that share now. And that's why the government is all based on debt system. The downside is that if you don't back it with something, you don't have proper accounting, you could just keep printing more paper out every time and it just devalues that asset. Great. Everyone can now have toilet paper and use your $5 of toilet paper. Now it's cheaper than toilet paper. Yeah. Let's see. And that's the problem about printing money is that you have too much of something, it'll cause an imbalance against
mhm,
the other goods and services you're trying to represent.
yep.
So yeah, that's exactly, and that's the nutshell. And anyone who understands basic accounting or anyone who's a collector You know how your items go up in value because you might be the only one in the world with it.
Yeah.
Imagine making all of a sudden putting in a photocopier and making 100 of them.
Well, then
Value goes down because now
value goes
everyone can
down.
see.
Exactly. It's just economics
And that's the
101.
reason. It's just basic 101. You don't want to keep printing money. Now, I understand that some people argue, say, well, all the rich people have all the money and assets. And they're not wrong that you can put the value into buildings and other materials. Hence, you remember we talked about the gold and the oil you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
Government could do the same thing. Why do you think they had that reserve? It's like the same person who owns a building and then they decide to hire a bunch of people to work inside of it.
Yeah.
People work inside, get paid. They own the building. The value's in the building now. Just like the government has the value in land, oil, and many other things they could actually have that value in. And they can still trade that. They don't have to keep it and say, oh, we own it, blah, blah, blah. You can't have it. That's what Ukraine is trying to do. But remember,
Yeah.
trade, trade, not war.
Exactly.
You don't need to steal. We can trade. Yes.
But
See, and that's
unfortunately
the thing. Yeah.
unfortunately,
Go
what
ahead.
recently happened is, the Republicans passed a spending bill, and we know the Republican Party, the last month or so, have been talking about cuts, budget cuts, cutting the budget, trying to reduce the deficit has been a major talking point in the media, at least, right? Um,
Yes,
and the
it has.
budget bill did not cut the deficit. The budget bill that they passed cut funding, about $880 billion of funding to it was SNAP and EBT, and
I
Medicare,
saw
Medicaid.
that. Yeah, they cut the
Then they
SNAP
cut SNAP
as well
EBT.
down.
They cut about $1 billion from small business, about $10 billion from agriculture, all things that I would argue are crucial for our nation to function.
Well, one of the things that a lot of the Republicans kind of see the cut is for the able-bodied workers. Now, I don't know. Again, it goes back to HR statistics and Department of Human Resources. I'm sure there's a government department there that's probably figuring this stuff out. And able-bodied workers mean, are you mentally challenged? Yes or no, or stuff like that. And there are a good amount of people that are mentally challenged. There are also local communities that also help those resources. See churches and many other
Yep.
places years before the government had spending a lot of money. You're not wrong to say that SNAP program should be there, but I think it needs to go through a proper evaluation first
Oh,
because
I do
we do
think
have a
that
lot.
these programs need to be audited because they did find in
Exactly.
my state, I believe they found something like $20 million in misused SNAP EBT benefits, and I think there should be an audit of the system, but I don't think it should be just, taken with a bludgeoning hammer. The other point
Well,
that
one of the things
Oh, yeah, go for it.
one of the things at the federal level that a lot of the conservatives are trying to be more fiscal conservative is because they're trying to use more of the federal funding for things that you can't do at the state level, rather than bouncing it back down to the state. Like if there's a hurricane or a major disaster, you might need those relief resources to rebuild and immediately get some of that resources or get help,
Mhm.
because money can help a lot of people when in need. But at the same time, it's like I said, you just can't. It's got to be one of those things where you build up a bank account and then you don't expect that emergency, but when you need it, you really, really need it, right?
Yeah.
Like if yeah, and that's the reason why a lot of fiscal conservatives want to just slash and crash a lot of things at the federal level, and they do want to force it back down to the state level. Now that could either mean the state taxes can go up, like Florida does have a higher property tax, and if I remember, so does uh, so does a lot of Texans and a lot of the middle area of the region. But as you go up to the northern area, the property tax goes back down. So you kind of have to realize where that money is circulating to as well. Because if you wanted to go to the federal level, shouldn't like border security, anti-warfare, all that military stuff that we could barely do at the local state level. Don't get me started with the ESG stuff in California. It's a joke here, really. It is. It's funny to watch though. But yeah, it's one of those things where the federal level, see, it's a different perspective, and that's why a lot of people kind of see the downside of the cut is like, well, the federal government could help me out, the state can't help me out because everyone's paying tax into that too, as well, if you think about it. A federal tax, income tax, but seeing some states like I don't know which ones there are other than Florida and Texas that have no income tax, but they have higher property tax to make up the difference. So the money circulates the other way around in the system as well. And as long as everyone's fiscally responsible, we know where that money's going. Hopefully. But
Yeah. Well, what really outraged me
hopefully,
about the new bill was that it took away the funding from all those crucial areas that we talked about: SNAP, EBT, Medicaid, Medicare,
mm-hmm.
small business, agriculture. And what it reallocated the funding to, and it actually increased our deficit by $4 trillion. What it reallocated to is
I saw that.
one of it was military spending. We already spend $1.5 trillion annually on military spending alone. And then, secondly, was it was under a tab called Ways and Means, which essentially just means tax cuts for the rich.
Tax cuts for the rich.
Yep.
Well, again, you have to define the rich and wealthy because there are two different classes of that a lot of people misconstrued. You could be making 250K a year and spend every single penny of it. Welcome to many people that are supposed to represent us. That's the salary of a lot of the senators and things like
Yeah.
that. They're in the 200 range. And then there are barely some people that barely make by with 50K a year, and that's California money with everything in double digits. So when I was younger, 50K a year was a good starting salary if you got that.
It was primarily
So
it was primarily tax cuts for basically like our politicians, senators, and big corporations, as
as always,
always.
yeah, they always try to write it into themselves.
Yep. And then the we did middle class folks did get a small tax cut, but we're only going to see maybe a $400 tax decrease.
I think so, but it also depends on where you are all because again, the wealthy class over the rich class, the wealthy class do not really bother with these small little $400 cuts and things like that because the wealthy class tends to use assets to their advantage, whether it's making money on loans, um, converting their actual land into a farm or something that's income generating. So it doesn't really matter to them as much because they will always and it says, oh yeah, we get the big tax cut for the rich, but generally what happens is they get forced to spend the money because if the money ain't moving, it just goes
Yeah.
stagnant, and you have it, you literally get an economy
They
crash.
have to they
But then
have
you
to
have the other.
spend it on some sort of asset or land
Mhm.
or
Yes.
business or whatnot.
Now I'm not going to argue the fact that if you are one of those few people that manage to get a huge inheritance and decide to go what you call it retire early, and if you play your cards right you probably can, but you have to figure that out yourself because everyone's different, their story's different and how they spend and what they needs and wants are. So so to define someone rich and wealthy just depends on where you kind of you own assets. Are you just making a lot of money and hoping that your tax doesn't go up because you might own property and you have to pay taxes on there? Heck, even businesses have to pay a huge property tax too. So efficiency is kind of where they're always trying to focus on that same thing. What can we make more efficient? Uh, Not do the same, career tasks over and over, even though it's supposed to be considered career for some reason. But I'm like, I have to keep learning something new every like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Very true, man. Very true.
Hmm.
One
Yeah,
more
because everything changes. Yeah.
one more thing before we go. It's about the Make America
Hmm.
Healthy Again movement may have just
JFK.
RFK Jr. Well, let's just say that his movement may have actually hit a stumbling block from within the Trump administration. You see, Lee Zeldin has actually decided to cut regulations on farms' pesticides usage, meaning that they could potentially put many hazardous chemicals all over these pesticides without any repercussions because Lee Zeldin, this oil tycoon who's now running the EPA, who for a long time I already had a bad feeling about him in the first place. I
I'm
think
not
that
sure about the pesticide issue so much from what I hear. I know there's some GMOs, non-GMOs, because some are naturally designed pesticides from what I saw from the engineering side of things. I have met a few people who actually own some of those patents. Yeah, they're in the considered wealthy class for that reason, but because of ownership. But they have designed some of that. Now, there are some arguments to that, and I have seen it. You're right. Pesticides should be regulated because we'll end up like China if we don't. But at the same time, it doesn't need a lot of regulation because if they are trying to operate farms and a lot of agricultural stuff, wouldn't they be more competitive to try to sell their product, not kill people?
yeah. What they primarily cut it off of is called forever chemicals, also known as PFAs.
Yes,
Um,
and I've heard of that too. In PFAS, I'm going to say there are some pros and cons of what you're running into PFAS. Yes, PFAS can live in water and other materials, but from what I'm also understanding, we also have a lot of materials that are like plastics that are disintegrating faster than we can even think today, and some of it are interacting with viruses and other materials. And I've seen a lot of things that are going bad in like 2 years or less. At the same time, when they say, like, I think the term is non-BPA plastic, someone had mentioned years ago about that, and supposedly something that disintegrates but doesn't have PFAS, and they find out later it did. So I'm not terribly against the scare because I know there's something out there. But as knowing a lot of people from the 1960s that I grew up with, we didn't really care about this stuff at all.
yeah. Well,
So,
all I know is that RFK Jr. He's part of this. I believe it's called the Maha Committee, right?
okay.
In the White House. Oh, what was it called? I gotta find this board. What was it called? Where is it? Let me look. I'm just gonna do a quick look up real quick. Commission.
There was
Maha
a
Commission
lot of
for the
news
White
there.
House. Yeah, this is called the White House, the Maha Commission, or Make America Healthy Again Commission, and underneath that, EPA has to actually, respond and answer to RFK Jr., who's the chair of this commission. So RFK better give Lee Zeldin a fucking talking to, honestly.
Yeah, well, they found. I think they got their cabinet assembled like a week or so ago in record time, from what I'm hearing. So hopefully, we'll see some change that's
Well,
we're promised.
this cabinet actually was planned about like 2 months or so in advance to the election, which is something that no president has ever done. Was take a cabinet and then assemble it 2 months before the election, and then kind of figure out the rest later.
Well, I mean, if you're a person hired for the job from a more business perspective, I say from Trump's point of view, you kind of want to do some vetting ahead of time
Yeah. Well, that's
instead
what
of
he
like,
did.
oh
That's
shoot, I'm
what he failed
elected.
to do the
Yeah.
first time was vet through his cabinet, and he had a lot of neocons in there. And this cabinet has significantly less. Of course, he's got guys like Mike Huckabee and Lee Zeldin inside that cabinet, but he's also picked some good picks as well.
Well, he's got, from what I can tell, he's got definitely 2 years of, I think, that House and Senate kind of on his side for now. But I don't know. This is like only what, a one vote, two vote that they can shoot it down a bill. So like even that big bill that you talked about, the big beautiful bill has a lot of stuff in it. But we've also seen the same thing with the Dems too. On the first 2 years, they try to ram through a lot of stuff.
Well,
So
just look at
this may be that
Biden's Build
one
Back Better
opportunity.
bill, where they tried to ram billions of dollars of spending on a lot of programs that were honestly just pork spending, and a lot of the stuff that they're seeing revealed now is from that.
Mm-hmm. And the actual spending is probably worse than the bill because the bill is the what we promised and we voted on, at least our representatives. But hopefully, one key thing that I'm hopefully going to see with technology is better transparency, because that'll get some of the younger generation in. When I was younger, we studied American government in middle school, and we used to do newspaper clipping, and they say no tabloids, no tabloids, because it's always opinionated.
Yeah.
But yeah, we used to do newspaper clippings of Clinton and stuff like that. And yes, he probably had fun in the Oval Office, way too much fun.
We call it the oral office.
But you know what? Yeah, the Oval Office, exactly. We joked around, but of course, the president only has 1/3 of the power or something like that. It's all distributed in such a way, so you have to get your representatives, and then you have your senates, and you have what represents the people. So Elon's right, and he is definitely White House tech support.
Well, I will say this
So,
about since we're kind of talking a little bit about Congress people. One
mhm,
Republican did vote against this big, beautiful budget, as Donald Trump puts it. His name's
mhm.
Thomas Massey. He's technically a libertarian, but he's running as a Republican, kind of similar fashion to like Rand Paul. And he's the only Republican who had the balls to basically stand up and vote against this bill and try to get some reform going on.
I
Unfortunately,
saw that, and I was wondering why, but then when you look at it, see, Trump did say one big beautiful bill, and seeing the fact that that's actually kind of one way of negotiating in Congress, I don't know if it's the best way in order to just break it up into separate bills and vote in smaller bills. But I think because it worked fairly well with the Biden administration, that's probably why he kind of taken that trick and say, wait a minute, what I tried to do the first time didn't work. Why did it work for Biden? So someone of
yeah,
his caliber may have noticed those patterns. And I think that's why they kind of pushed it through, because this is the only opportunity they may be able to get enough party lines to pass enough stuff through. You might overspend a little bit. You might not get what you want, but you'll get some of what you want. And I think was the goal. And that could be the reason why it went through
yeah.
at that level.
Well, his Thomas Massey's effort, even though he voted no, was in vain. But the thing is, the reason he said that he voted against it was because this bill actually raises our deficit. It raised our deficit. It increased the debt. So you know
Hmm.
he's the
There
only
was a
one who didn't sell
resolution
out his
to it.
values. And then obviously we know why all the Democrats voted against the bill because anything Trump does is bad to the Democrats.
Well, yeah, because you're going to be cutting all this off and things like that.
Yeah.
No more party. Yeah.
That
Yeah, they
and
say the adults are in the house.
that and Bernie Sanders yelling about Social Security and SNAP EBT benefits.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much what happens. Like I said, it's the fiscal conservatives at it in there, but yes, hopefully more transparencies will start showing up that. But like I said, I don't know when they had the deadline to actually run that bill, and that's why it went through so fast. Because I remember they have to have a bill at the early of the year, right after the election. Because I remember seeing
Yeah.
that every time, like at the very beginning of the year for the entire year to fund Congress and anything else. Otherwise, we can end up with a shutdown, depending on who considers that being a bad thing or a good thing, depending on the resolution of the expenditures. But I think what turned a lot of fiscal conservative head to vote on that bill was because Elon's doing the transparency work. So it kind of gave him the opportunity to see the inside much better. Otherwise, it probably would have been stuck.
Yeah.
So again, and then they'd blame it on Trump.
Yeah. Well, the Democrats, they will blame basically everything on Trump. If you ask me, I'm an independent, so I would just say that I criticize Trump when he does good or when he does bad things, and when he does good things, I applaud him. That's how I'm rolling through with this.
Uh, I just kind of left I kind of went more towards the adult route of things to try to see what can happen, and negotiating is going to be the tactic going forward.
Negotiation is
You might have to give up yes, you might have to give up a little to keep the other party happy in order to get what you want or try to get close to what you
well,
want. You might not get everything you want, but yeah.
that's something I've long advocated for the bipartisanship, but not everyone. We live in such in times right now where, like, you go on social media and everybody like on social media is just like a partisan hack. If you like, they think if you're not like a SJW Democrat with pronouns in their bio, then you're some redneck MAGA guy with the red hat. And I'm like, dude, I'm just an independent chilling here. Like, leave me alone.
Uh, the red hat ain't terribly bad. I wear things with red dragons, so I
Well,
like red things.
I got a green hat that I'm wearing on stream. It's the Make America Healthy Again hat.
Yes.
Some people,
Whereas
some people
the
will
other,
say I'm being what's the word for it? When you go against every like what everyone is saying. Forget
yeah.
what it's called.
Well, as I says, it's really hard to help other people around you if you can't help yourself, and that's what kind of swept me more in this direction. And I'm more than happy to help other people, but I've got to make sure to cover myself, my family, anything that's close tier before I can reach out to other people. See, and that's why I'm kind of more in that direction as more of a fiscal conservative, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah,
There are people in need, but you know, you're going to have to make that choice yourself, and you can't ask government to do everything for you.
yeah.
I want less government.
Well, me too. I'm in the same boat. I'm lean
No,
very libertarian, and I do tend to lean more towards the right than the left. I'm in the same boat. I don't want the government involved. I don't want the federal government spending all these massive expenditures as well. You know, I'm glad that through the
same time, I can't go against a cartel. I can't go against another country. I'm only one guy, and I like the government to keep our country safe.
Oh yeah,
That's all. Simple.
I should bring up before we go as
Yeah,
well. What do you think of all these?
that's how I'm going to end it there. So, what else you want? What's the last question before I go?
I was gonna say before you go, what do you think of all these deportations? Because everyone is flipping out about.
Well, you know what? I hate to say it. I mean, you broke the law, you know. I mean, they are trying to make it a little easier now. An online website, you can register yourself and you might be able to come back in as an H-1B1 visa. So you're not permanently banned from the US of A. But I hate to say it, we have a lot of dangerous people in here. And yes, there are explosions outside from time to time where I'm at here, and California is practically taken over by Mexico. So I'm pretty sure California is not California anymore unless you go really far inland or up north where all the farmlands are.
Yeah,
But beyond that, the deportation, I would say they're not. If we have an estimate of 20 million, and if you do the math, that means you have to have at least between 10 to 100,000 a day, 10,000 a day on average. If you do times 365 days a year minus holidays, blah blah blah, you come out to maybe barely 10 million. So we're really far behind, unfortunately. Um, that's pretty much how it's ended up being. But California is a sanctuary state, so it's not going to change here for a while, at least with the current powers that be. So, and yes, I've already written my own reports up too. I've talked. The DHS was actually in my area about a week ago, and I talked to the sheriff about 2 weeks ago when he was in here by the office after because we got broken in here every week up until like right after last year. Right, so when they started sending people in the area. But now I hear just the same amount of police cars going around now. So at least there are some signs of legal law taking action currently. So yes, if you broke the law, you know you kind of have to go. I'm sorry.
yeah. It's very true. I've heard some stories that there have been some unfortunate mistakes where like non-citizens with green cards were arrested but were later released anyways. And the left will like to take those like stories and stuff of like old
Extreme
grannies
stories, yes.
and stuff, and will they'll spin them so that way it sounds like, oh, this is happening all the time. But I'm in agreement with you on the border where we do have a border crisis. There's a humanitarian crisis at the border. There's human trafficking rings, drugs coming in.
Human trafficking, drug trafficking, If we can't help ourselves, I'm sorry, you can't have the door open anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it
yeah,
needs
like I said, I don't mind. We have a lot of immigrants that work for companies and things like that, and we pay those H-1B1 visas. They could be a couple of grand. Trump even had came out and said, "Why don't you just put out a gold card for $5 million and have it pay the deficit down?" Instead of importing people. Yeah, that might not be a bad idea if you really want to come here and you're a cartel member and you're running away from your own guys. $5 million should be what you just made in last week's drug.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been good to have you on the stream.
Good having you on too, chatting with you on the stream too as well. So
Alrighty, man. Good luck on that Home Depot run.
yeah, I got to go run over to Home Depot and go get some parts. So I'll
Yeah,
chat
and
talk to
watch
you guys
out
later.
for those bad hombres over there.
Yeah.
All right, man. See ya. And alrighty, let's come back up. Alrighty, guys. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in to another Nomadic News video. That was my good friend TM Drake. I will put it here in the comments for you guys to go ahead and look at if you need to go subscribe to him if you haven't already. His at on YouTube is at TM Drake. He also goes by Drake Dragon as well. And he's also in my Rowdy Friends section of featured channels on YouTube. So, again, if you haven't already, be sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you guys for tuning in. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show. This is the Nomadic Cole signing off. Goodbye. Ending the stream in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.